James had never expected to be in the middle of an intergalactic event, but here he was, human soldier, standing in the heart of a grand palace on the alien planet of Xiron, the most powerful world in the galaxy. Had been assigned to a diplomatic mission, though he knew little about the customs of this alien civilization. His uniform, simple and unremarkable compared to the richly adorned gowns of the Xyronian nobles, made him feel even more out of place. The palace was massive, its high walls decorated with gleaming crystals that caught the light of countless stars outside. The floor beneath his boots was smooth and cold, the walls lined with portraits of long-gone Xyronian rulers. James didn't know it, but the event being held was one of the most important gatherings in the galaxy. It wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was a chance for the most powerful people in the universe to gather and show their might. As he nervously stood near the back of the hall, trying not to draw attention to himself, Queen Lyra entered the room. She was stunning. Her tall frame, draped in gold and silver robes, seemed to shine like the stars themselves. Her long, flowing hair was dark as the night. Her eyes, piercing and bright, held a power that made even the bravest soldiers in the room tremble. As she walked, the crowd parted, and even the most respected rulers lowered their eyes in respect. There was no mistaking who she was. She was the most beautiful and powerful woman in the galaxy. James had heard of her. Queen Lyra, the ruler of Xiron, was known not only for her intelligence and wisdom, but also for her fearsome reputation. Her kingdom was vast, and no one had ever dared to challenge her rule. She was a leader in every sense of the word, and her people adored her, but James had no idea that he would soon be the focus of her attention. The queen moved through the crowd with ease, smiling at her people and exchanging pleasantries with the other galactic leaders. And then, as if on instinct, her eyes found James. He froze, unsure of what to do. His heart raced as her gaze locked onto him, and he could feel a strange, magnetic pull drawing him closer to her. The room seemed to fade away, the laughter and chatter of the crowd turning into a dull hum in the background. All that mattered was the queen and her intense, unwavering stare. Her lips parted, and in a voice that carried across the entire hall, she said, "This man is my mate." James blinked in confusion. His heart skipped a beat. Mate? What was she talking about? He had never seen her before in his life. Was she joking? Had he done something wrong? The entire room went silent, and James could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He suddenly wished he could disappear. The queen's voice echoed in the vast hall, a declaration that sent shockwaves through the crowd. Whispers filled the air as everyone looked at him, the human soldier who had somehow become the queen's chosen mate. But James couldn't move. He couldn't speak. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She must be mistaken, he thought to himself. I'm just here to deliver a message. This can't be real. But Queen Lyra was not looking at him in confusion. Her expression was calm, almost serene, as if she had expected this moment to happen. She took a step closer to James, and the air around them seemed to shift. Her eyes never left his, and James couldn't help but feel a strange warmth spreading through his chest. It was as if her words had reached into his very soul. "Human," she said softly, "you are my mate." James was still frozen in place. He could barely breathe, let alone respond. The queen's words had taken him by surprise, and nothing about this situation made any sense. But before he could gather his thoughts, the queen turned away and waved her hand. Signaling for the event to continue, James stood there, dazed, as the crowd slowly returned to their conversations. Though the whispers about him never stopped. What had just happened? He had always thought of himself as an ordinary soldier, someone who followed orders and did his duty. Never had he imagined that his life would change in an instant, especially not because of a woman as powerful and beautiful as Queen Lyra. Despite the chaotic thoughts swirling in his mind, he couldn't help but notice the way the queen had looked at him. It wasn't a glance filled with pity or mockery. No, it was something much deeper. It was a look that seemed to see into him, past his uniform and his rank, to something more. Was it possible that she wasn't just making a statement for the sake of the crowd? Could she truly believe that he was her mate? The idea felt impossible. But then, why did he feel like he had just been chosen for something far greater than he could ever have imagined? James couldn't shake off the words that Queen Lyra had spoken. "This man is my mate." The phrase echoed in his mind, repeating over and over like a song that he couldn't escape. I'd never expected anything like this, especially not from someone as powerful and feared as the Queen of Xiren. His mind raced as he walked back to his room, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The palace was huge, with tall corridors and rooms filled with paintings, statues, and ancient artifacts. James had been assigned a small, quiet room to stay in during his mission, but tonight everything felt different. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in on him, and he couldn't sit still. He paced back and forth, wondering if he had misunderstood the Queen's words. Perhaps she had meant something else, or maybe it was some sort of joke. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her face again, her eyes locked on his with such intensity. He was still lost in his thoughts, when a soft knock at the door interrupted his train of thought. He opened it to find a Xyronian servant standing before him, her face as calm and unreadable as the stone walls around them. "General James, the Queen requests your presence in the throne room," the servant said, bowing her head before stepping aside. James didn't have time to think. He nodded and followed the servant through the winding halls of the palace. The air felt heavy with anticipation, and every step seemed to echo as he walked. When they finally reached the throne room, James could feel his heart beating faster. What did she want now? What was this all about? The throne room was even more grand than the rest of the palace, with high ceilings that seemed to reach the stars themselves. The Queen sat on her throne, a large, beautifully crafted chair made of shimmering materials that seemed to glow in the dim light. She was as stunning as ever, her dark hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders, and her eyes watching James with an unreadable expression. "James," she said, her voice calm and regal, "I trust you are well after our encounter." Earlier, James nodded, still unsure of how to respond. "Your Majesty?" There's no need to speak, soldier," she interrupted with a small smile. "I called you here because I must explain something to you. This is not a decision I make lightly. The bond I spoke of is not something that can be ignored. It is a matter of great importance for both of us." James stood there, his mind racing again. He had no idea what she was talking about. He had heard stories about mating bonds among different species, but never anything like this. What did it mean to be chosen by a queen? What did it mean to be her mate? "I don't understand, Your Majesty," James said, his voice low. "Does this mean for me? For you?" The Queen's eyes softened for just a moment before she stood up and walked toward him. "It means that you and I are connected in ways you cannot yet comprehend. The bond between us is not just a simple romantic connection. It goes much deeper. It is a link that ties our destinies together." James looked at her, trying to grasp the weight of her words. She was a queen, a ruler of a vast empire. He was just a soldier from Earth. How could someone like him be connected to someone like her? Why me? He asked the question slipping from his mouth before he could stop it. Why a human? There are so many others in the galaxy more powerful, more suited to you. Lyra studied him for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "It is not a matter of power, James. It is a matter of fate. There are legends among my people that speak of a time when a human would rise to be my mate. I never believed those stories, but now I see that they were true. Your species has an untapped potential, a strength that no one can predict." "But I'm just a soldier," James protested, feeling overwhelmed. "I'm not a king. I'm not special." "You are special, James," Lyra said, her voice softer now. "Not because of who you are as a soldier, but because of who you are as a person. You possess a strength that my people have long sought. Your courage, your loyalty, your ability to see beyond the surface, that is why you are my mate." James opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. He didn't know what to say. He was still processing everything, trying to understand how he, a simple human soldier, could be the one to stand beside the queen of a galactic empire. "I do not expect you to understand fully," Lyra continued. "But I will help you. I will teach you the ways of my people. I will show you how to unlock the power within you." "But what if I can't do it?" James asked, his voice shaking. What if I'm not the one? The queen smiled, a slight curve of her lips.
Ow.
Then you will fail. But I have no doubt you will succeed, James. We were always meant to find each other. James stood there, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had never believed in destiny, and yet here he was, standing before the Queen of Xiren, a woman, who claimed he was her mate. The thought seemed impossible, yet somehow it felt real. Lyra's gaze softened as she walked closer to him, placing a hand gently on his arm. You are not alone in this, James. Whatever happens, we will face it. Together. James stood in the Queen's grand chamber, still trying to process everything that had happened. Queen Lyra had just told him that they were destined to be together, bound by a force beyond their control. But what did it mean? Couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled into something far bigger than he could ever understand. Please, James said, his voice soft. I need more answers. I don't understand why I'm the one you've chosen. Lyra sat on a soft golden chair, her eyes thoughtful as she looked at him. I know this is difficult to understand, James. It is not something that can be explained easily. But I will. She stood up and walked over to a nearby window. The view was breathtaking. Vast cities and endless skies stretched out across the landscape. Stars twinkled brightly in the distance, and for a moment James felt as if they were the only two people in the galaxy. This is not just about you and me, Lyra continued, her voice calm and steady. It is about the fate of my people, of my entire kingdom. The bond between us is not a coincidence. It has been foretold for centuries. James was still confused. But I'm just a soldier. I'm from Earth. I'm not a part of your world. How could I be the one who's supposed to help you? Lyra turned to face him, her expression serious. It is true that you are not from my world, but that does not mean you do not have a purpose here. The legends speak of a time when a human would come to Xiren, a human with strength, courage, and the ability to see beyond the surface. Someone who could help my people in ways we cannot yet understand? James took a step forward, his brow furrowed. So, you're saying I have some special power? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, but it is not a power you have discovered yet. It lies within you, waiting to be unlocked. The bond between us will awaken this power, and together we will face the challenges that lie ahead. James felt a strange sensation stir inside him. Could it be true? Could he really have some hidden potential that would change everything? The idea seemed impossible, but then again, everything about this situation felt impossible. What kind of challenges? James asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The galaxy is changing, Lyra replied, her gaze distant, as if she were looking far beyond the palace walls. My enemies grow stronger, and my kingdom is under threat. The bond between us may be the only thing that can protect Xiren, but we must act quickly. Time is running out. James nodded, though he wasn't sure what to make of it all. He'd never been part of something so grand, so important. All he had known was his life as a soldier, following orders and doing his duty. Now, suddenly, he was at the center of a galactic struggle. But why me? He asked again, unable to let go of the question that had been haunting him. Why am I the one who's supposed to help you? There are others who are stronger, smarter, more suited to this. Lyra walked closer to him, her eyes softening. James, you are not just a soldier. You have a heart, a strength of will that no one else possesses. My people have strength, but we lack what you have: your compassion, your ability to understand others. That is what makes you special. James felt a warmth spread through him at her words, though he still didn't fully understand. I don't feel special. I'm just a man. I don't know anything about ruling a planet or fighting enemies like you do. You don't need to know everything right away, Lyra said, her voice reassuring. This bond will guide you. It will show you what you need to know when the time comes. Together, we will face whatever comes our way. James took a deep breath and looked out the window, trying to gather his thoughts. The weight of the situation was heavy on his shoulders. He had never asked for any of this, and yet here he was, standing next to a queen who claimed he was destined to be her mate. Human of all things. You keep saying we're connected? James said, his voice quiet. How can I trust that? How can I know it's real? Lyra smiled softly and stepped closer to him. Because it already is real, James. You feel it too, don't you? James was silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. He had felt something since the moment he first saw her, a pull that was almost impossible to explain. It wasn't just her beauty, it was something deeper, something that reached into him. But could it really be the bond she spoke of? Was he really meant to be her mate? I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted, his voice low. I don't know. If I can be the person you think I am, if you don't have to be anyone but yourself, Lyra said gently. The bond will guide you. Trust in it, and trust in me. Together, we can face anything. James looked into her eyes, seeing the sincerity and warmth in her gaze. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but for the first time since arriving on Xeron, he didn't feel so alone. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was the beginning of something more than he could ever imagine. I'll try, he said, his voice steady. I'll try to trust in this bond. Lyra's smile was full of warmth and gratitude. That is all I ask. Days passed after the Queen's words, and James couldn't shake the feeling that his life had been turned upside down. He had been just a soldier, doing his duty, but now he was caught in a world far beyond what he ever imagined. Queen Lyra's presence was constant, and even though their bond seemed impossible, it was growing stronger with each passing day. At first, James struggled with the idea of being the Queen's mate. He was from Earth, a planet with no real power in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Lyra, on the other hand, was a queen of a powerful civilization, her people looking up to her with admiration and fear. What could he possibly offer someone like her? He wasn't a warrior like the alien soldiers in her army, nor was he a diplomat or a leader. He was just James. But as he spent more time with Lyra, something changed. There was something about her that made him feel more than just a soldier. She wasn't just a queen, she was a person, strong, wise, but also kind. In her presence, he found himself slowly opening up, his doubts and fears slipping away. They spent hours talking, learning about each other's worlds, their pasts, and their hopes for the future. One afternoon, Lyra invited James to take a walk through the palace gardens. The gardens were vast, filled with strange alien plants that glowed softly under the light of the twin suns. The air was rich with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, and the sounds of distant waterfalls filled the silence. As they walked together, James couldn't help but feel a sense of peace that he hadn't experienced before. It felt as though everything in the galaxy had led him to this moment. Do you ever miss your home? Lyra asked, her voice soft and thoughtful as she looked at the flowers around them. James paused for a moment, the question catching him off guard. I do, he said slowly. Earth is different. I miss the simplicity of it sometimes. Quiet, the familiarity. But then I also realized that Earth, it's not enough anymore. I never thought I'd end up on a planet like Xyron talking to a queen. Lyra smiled, her gaze meeting his. I understand. I've been in your shoes, you know. I've always known I was meant to lead my people, but I never imagined that I would have to face the challenges I do. It's not easy even for someone like me. James looked at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes that she didn't often show to others. You've done an incredible job leading your people. I've seen the way they look at you, how much they respect you. Respect is important, she said, but it's not enough. A leader must inspire loyalty. But even more than that, a leader must inspire trust. I think that's what we need most right now. Trust. And that's something I'm still learning. James nodded, understanding her words more than he expected. Leadership was about more than just power. It was about understanding the needs of the people and acting in their best interest, even when it was difficult. Lyra had been trained to lead, but perhaps she was also learning how to trust in those around her as they continued to walk through the gardens. James found himself opening up in ways he hadn't before. He spoke of his life on Earth, of his childhood, and the things that had shaped him into the person he was. Lyra listened intently, asking questions and offering insights, making him feel as though his past mattered. I never expected this, James said quietly as they walked through a path lined with tall, glowing trees. "I thought my life would always be about following orders, about fighting. But now, it feels like there's something more, something I don't quite understand yet." Lyra stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. "It's because there is more, James. You have something inside you that you haven't discovered yet. It's not just the bond between us, but your heart. Your strength is in your ability to see the world differently, to understand things beyond what others might. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were not like the others." James met her gaze, feeling a mix of emotions. She was right. He had always seen things differently, always been willing to question orders, to think for himself. Was why he had been chosen, not just for his physical strength, but for his ability to see the world from a different perspective. "I don't know if I'm ready for all this," James admitted. "I don't know if I'm ready to lead, to be your mate too, be part of this." Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand gently on his arm. "You don't have to be ready right away. I never expected you to be ready. This bond will guide you. James, I have faith in you, and that is all that matters right now." The warmth of her touch lingered, and James felt something shift within him. He had always been taught to rely on himself, to trust in his training, in his instincts. But now, standing here with Lyra, he realized that maybe it wasn't just about trusting himself. Maybe it was about trusting her and trusting the bond they shared as they continued to walk. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the gardens in a soft, golden light. The air felt calm and peaceful, and for the first time since arriving on Xiren, James felt a sense of belonging. It wasn't because of the bond or the title of mate that Lyra had given him, but because of the connection they were building. A connection that, no matter how strange it felt, seemed to make sense. Lyra turned to him with a smile. "We are not so different, you and I. We both have roles to play in this galaxy. And together, we will figure out what those roles are." James nodded, his heart a little lighter than before. "I'll try, Lyra. I'll try to be the man you believe I can be." And for the first time, James felt like he might just be ready to embrace the future. The days after James and Queen Lyra's conversation in the garden felt different. There was still a tension in the air, one that James couldn't ignore. Lyra had spoken of the bond between them like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. For James, it was still hard to understand, but he knew something was changing. He could feel it inside him, a sense of connection that was impossible to explain. But not everyone in the palace felt the same way as James spent more time with the Queen, training under her guidance and learning the ways of Xiren. There were whispers behind closed doors. The nobles and military leaders of the kingdom were uneasy about the bond between Lyra and the human. They didn't understand it, and they didn't trust it. After all, James was just a soldier, not even from this galaxy. How could someone like him be the one to stand beside their queen? One evening, as James sat alone in his quarters, there was a soft knock on his door. When he opened it, he was greeted by one of the queen's trusted advisors, General Kale, a tall Xyronian with sharp features and cold eyes. "General James," Kale said stiffly, "the queen requests your presence in the council room." James nodded and followed Kale down the long corridor, his mind racing. What could this be about? Was it about the bond? Was it about the growing opposition he had started to sense? He had no idea, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The council room was large, the walls made of a dark, polished stone that reflected the dim light from the overhead chandeliers. At the center of the room sat Queen Lyra, surrounded by several other high-ranking officials, including military leaders and nobles. James noticed that their eyes all turned to him as he entered, their expressions unreadable. It felt as though he were walking into a lion's den. "James," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. "Thank you for joining us." She motioned for him to sit at a table in the center of the room. James took a seat, his heart beating faster as he looked around at the faces of the council members. There was an undeniable tension in the air. Kale stood beside the queen, his posture rigid. "Your Majesty," Kale began, "we have gathered here today to discuss the future of Xiren. We have heard many concerns from the people. Many fear the union between you and this human. They believe that it will weaken our kingdom, that we may lose our power. James felt his chest tighten. He had expected something like this, but hearing it out loud made it more real than ever. "What do you mean?" Lyra asked, her voice full of authority. "James and I have the same goals. We want to protect Zirin. We want to lead our people into a new era of peace and strength." Kale's gaze shifted to James, and James could feel the weight of his stare. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, a human cannot lead alongside a queen of Zirin. Our people will never accept it. There is a limit to what the bond can do." The room fell silent. The other council members exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke up. James could feel the eyes of the room on him, waiting for him to respond. "I understand the concerns," James said slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I'm not here to take over. I'm not here to rule. I'm here because the Queen believes in me. She believes that together we can protect Zirin and make it stronger." Kale's eyes narrowed. "It's not just about belief, human. It's about tradition. It's about the way things have always been. You cannot have a foreigner, a soldier with no real knowledge of our ways, standing at the Queen's side." James could feel the tension building. His fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to stay calm. He didn't want to argue. He didn't want to fight. But he knew this wasn't just about him. It was about the future of Zirin and its people. "James is right," Lyra spoke up suddenly, her voice strong. "The bond between us is real, and it will strengthen us, not weaken us. I have chosen him for a reason. He has qualities that no one here possesses. His courage, his heart, his willingness to think beyond the norm, these are the qualities that will guide us to a brighter future. I will not let anyone stand in the way of what we are building together." Kale was silent for a moment, but his gaze remained hard. "If you truly believe that, Your Majesty, then you are making a grave mistake." The tension in the room was unbearable. James could see the anger in Kale's eyes, and he knew that this wouldn't end here. This wasn't just about James and Lyra anymore. It was about the future of the entire kingdom. "Perhaps," Kale continued, his voice colder than before, "but if the people do not accept this, there will be consequences, and those consequences will be yours to bear." Lyra didn't flinch. "Then we will face them together." James couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for her. Yet she was so strong, so unyielding. Even in the face of opposition from her own people, she stood firm. As the meeting continued, James felt a sense of unease settling in. The council members may have agreed to move forward for now, but he knew this wasn't the end. There would be more challenges ahead. There would be more people who didn't understand. More who questioned the bond between him and Lyra. But one thing was clear. He couldn't back down. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. James stood up, meeting Lyra's gaze across the table. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I'm with you. I'll stand by you, no matter what comes." Lyra smiled softly, the weight of the moment lifting from her shoulders. "And I will stand by you, James. Together, we will face whatever comes." As James walked out of the council room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of determination. The road ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to face it by Lyra's side. James walked through the grand corridors of the palace, his mind heavy with everything that had happened over the past few days. The opposition to his relationship with Queen Lyra had not eased. In fact, it seemed to grow stronger each day. The council's concerns were just the beginning. Whispers of rebellion and unrest filled the air, and James could feel the tension in the palace growing thicker. He didn't know if he was ready for this, didn't know if he was the right person for this. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down. Not now, not when Lyra needed him. As he approached the throne room, James took a deep breath and steeled himself. Outside, the Queen was waiting for him. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a softness in her eyes that made him feel like he wasn't facing a queen, but a woman who cared deeply about her people and him. Lyra looked up as he entered, a small but warm smile on her face. "James, I'm glad you came." He nodded, though he couldn't hide the uncertainty in his voice. "Your Majesty, we need to talk. About everything. The opposition is getting stronger, and I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if we can." Lyra stood and walked over to him, her hand resting gently on his arm. James, she said softly, you've already handled more than most people could ever dream of. You've faced every challenge with courage and strength, even when you didn't believe in yourself. You are stronger than you know. James shook his head. But I'm not a ruler. I'm not meant to be a king or a leader. I'm just a soldier. I don't have the experience or the knowledge to help you lead Xiren. Lyra smiled gently. You are wrong. You are exactly what I need. You have wisdom, a perspective that is rare in this galaxy. You've shown me that there's more to leadership than just strength and power. There's understanding, compassion, and the ability to listen. James sighed, his frustration still evident. But what if that's not enough? What if the people never accept me? What if they can't see what you see? Lyra's expression grew more serious, her eyes locked onto his with a deep, unwavering intensity. James, I can't promise that everything will be easy. Can't promise that the people will accept you immediately. But I can promise this. I will stand by you, and together we will show them what we can do. We'll earn their trust, not by force, but by our actions. She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. The bond between us is not just about a title. It's not about me being the queen and you being a soldier. It's about what we can build together. It's about what we can teach the galaxy. This is bigger than us, James. This is about Xiren's future and the future of every planet that looks to us for leadership. James felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he listened to her words. He had been so focused on his doubts, on his fear of failing, that he hadn't seen the bigger picture. Lyra wasn't asking him to be something he wasn't. She was asking him to be himself, to trust in the bond they shared, to trust in their shared vision for the future. Scared, Lyra, James admitted, his voice soft. I don't know if I can live up to what you expect of me. Lyra's eyes softened, and she stepped closer to him, her hand reaching up to gently touch his face. You don't have to live up to anyone's expectations but your own. You don't have to be perfect, James. You just have to be true to yourself and to the people you want to protect. He closed his eyes, taking in a deep breath. Lyra's words were like a balm to his troubled mind. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of clarity. The path ahead wasn't easy, but it was his to walk, and he wasn't walking it alone. Want to try? James said quietly. I want to try to be the man you believe I can be. I want to help you lead Xiren, but I need your help too. I can't do this by myself. You won't have to, Lyra said, her voice filled with certainty. I will always be by your side. Together, we will make the galaxy see that humanity and Xiren can be stronger together. The bond we share isn't just between two people. It's a symbol of what can happen when we unite. We will show them that. James nodded, his heart finally beginning to settle. He had made his decision. He wasn't going to back down. Not from the Queen, not from Xiren. It's not from the future that they could build together. Lyra smiled warmly and took his hand. Then let's begin. We have a future to fight for. James smiled back, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known before. He wasn't just fighting for the Queen or for Xiren. He was fighting for a future that was built on understanding, trust, and the bond they shared. The road ahead would not be easy, but together they would face whatever came their way. James had made his decision. He was ready to face the challenges, ready to stand by Lyra's side. They were not just a queen and her soldier anymore. They were a team of pair bound by fate, ready to change the galaxy.